keep my heart set upon your voice, knowing that your word, it never comes back void. No weapon will prosper, no enemy triumph. He will not overcome, he can't scale these walls. Injustice will not win, hell's gates will not prevail. Not on my time, not on my watch. I am a watchman, and I take my place. As I wait, I will keep the faith. 'Cause I am a watchman, and I stand my ground. But if I never see it, I will stay the course. I will run the race, I will fight the fight, and I will keep the faith. I keep my eyes fixed on you.
Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to our pipeline report. Here it is Monday. It is the 23rd day of June 2025. And it is happening in the world right now as we are on live. There's many things happening. We're going to get to that very shortly. But thank you for partnering with us on this ministry of praying. We're trying to get the revelation down the pipeline. That's why we call it that. That it passes down to many people, intercessors especially, that are praying for America, but also the world events. And of course, the world events are affecting America right now concerning what happened this weekend in Iran with the bombing of the nuclear facilities in Iran. And so thank you. Please share this if you want with some of your friends. Remind everybody we're now live on Facebook on our Pipeline Report page only. Obviously, you got to be a member of that group in order to watch it. But you can, if you know somebody that's in the Pipeline group that likes Facebook, we are on there now. We had a great response to that last week, so we're going to keep that one going. You can also, obviously, some of you are watching on Rumble as well as YouTube Pipeline Report page. Those are our three platforms that we're on. We're going to stay on those and deal with these issues. We do not want to go on the Christian Center ones because of potential censoring that goes on, and we don't want to affect, because that's mainly for our church services and everything. That we want to keep that clean from any censoring. Okay, so that's kind of where we are. If you watched events, I know everybody on this report pretty much watched what happened this weekend when the American forces bombed the 3 nuclear sites in Iran. And now, as I speak right now, breaking news, the Iranians are bombing our base in Qatar or Qatar, depending on who you listen to, how it's pronounced, but it is occurring right now. I'm just going to glance over here and see what's going on there. But they're bombing. I saw some video of the bombs going up. They're being intercepted at Qatar. So we do want to pray for our forces. That was one of the big things we prayed for Sunday, was our forces, that they would be protected from these retaliations that's going on in those places. So I know some of you watch the news. That's going to be on for a while, but we're going to pray into that here shortly, covering our troops in the whole region. I think there are 40 different sites that we have troops in that area. So the potential is it can be anywhere among those places. So we want to pray protection over all our troops in that area. We have so much to talk about today because of the events that have happened. And now it's coming home. And I think that's going to be a big issue that we need to deal with concerning how it affects us here in the land of America. if you're watching from the nations, please just pray for us, cover us in this moment, and ask the Lord to strengthen us as we move forward. So it came out this weekend. The statistics are about what happened. One quick little clip here. This is from just an X feed. Let me get a better view of that. There we go. This came out from an X feed in which they shared that more than 700 Iranians were released in the U.S. under Biden, and that's quite alarming to say the least. But these reports are that they were illegally entered the U.S. or were released into the country by the Biden administration. This is according to the data of the Center Square obtained Sunday from the Border Patrol Agency. So this is a viable, vetted source as it came across. We've seen some of these have come across. We don't even know who they are. That's one thing I think Mr. Holman talks about. And when he shares, let me share this video, which he talks about that issue.
Particularly, how many Iranians are in the country that are in sleeper cells trying to do bad to America right now?
Well, look, you and I have talked about this many times. I said the last 4 years, my biggest concern was this open border was the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen. So I pulled numbers this morning just from a CBP under Joe Biden. There was 1,272 nationals of Iran released in the country between OFO and the Border Patrol. And you compare that to the Trump administration, zero. Right, zero releases. And right now, because of President Trump's leadership, we have the most secure border in my lifetime, most secure border in the history of this nation. So we have a secure border. That was President Trump's big win on securing this nation. So we're not releasing people in this country. Special interest aliens aren't crossing that border undetected. But under Joe Biden, we had over 10 million people cross that border. But my biggest concern from day one, beyond the fentanyl, beyond the sex trafficking women and children, were the 2 million known gotaways. Over 2 million people crossed that border. We don't know who they are, where they came from, because they got away, because Border Patrol is so overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis that Biden created that over 2 million people crossed the border and got away.
I want to pause there. Think about those numbers. 2 million people we know nothing about. That's a lot of people.
That is my biggest concern, and that's what created the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen.
And you have that on surveillance, seeing people get away. Do you have a sense of where they went?
No, intelligence community under President Trump has been on this since day one. What gives me any comfort at all is that you don't have Christopher Wray there, you got Kash Patel there. You don't have Alejandro Mayorkas there anymore, you got Kristi Noem, and you certainly don't have Kamala Harris as a border czar. So President Trump brought a great team, been on this since day one. Do we know where every one of the 2 million are? No. We don't know who they all are. We don't know why they're here, where they came from. But we do know Border Patrol intelligence for the last 4 years, they found prayer mats south of the border. They found identification from people from Iran, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Syria, south of the border. So we know that some terrorists have crossed that border. We'd be a fool to think zero cross. The thing is, though, we got President Trump as a commander-in-chief who's put all resources on that. That's why President Trump from day one, ICE operations, despite what the left media says, he has been focused on national security threats and public safety threats. And between ICE and the Bureau, we've removed thousands of national security threats because of President Trump's leadership on this.
Yes.
So we as we share this, a very important point here that he makes about this issue. And I'm going to tell you something. I won't name the senator. I was on it was last year before, when Biden was really opening up the border. I was on a lobbying Zoom with a senator, and I brought up this topic about these illegals coming across and not being vetted, not being checked. This is a Republican senator. And I said, Senator, thank you for all your work, et cetera. But we do have a problem. And matter of fact, that week, there were 10 Iranians that were caught crossing the border. And I said, sir, this is very disconcerting to us as citizens that we have people coming across the border. And just this week, 10 Iranians were captured. And he just fluffed it off. And he said, well, I think almost everybody coming here is just coming for a better life. And I'm not here to say that a lot of them aren't coming for that reason, because they are. But the fact, when you have a U.S. senator, a Republican especially, who's saying that and ignoring that they just caught 10 Iranians, I don't care if they caught one, that's one too many. When you catch somebody coming across the border, I have other people connected to ICE, etc., where Russians were coming in, young men, almost all young men between 20 and 30 or so, loaded with money, were being shipped in. Matter of fact, some of them were being bussed in from the Central America through some of these NGO organizations who were getting them here. They were being processed Louisiana. That's how I found out about them, because we have a immigration processing facility here, and all these Russians came through our area up here in North Louisiana. They didn't stay here. They went through the process. What we were told was they were told to process them through and just release them. And so there they go into the country. And I'm not making that up. And even if I was, let's say I was making it up, I'm not. The fact is that he said it right here, 2 million they don't even know about. And then the rest they do know about. So this is a real issue right now. What's going on with those that we have sleeper cells in our country. I've talked to police officers, others who are fully aware of these sleeper cells, and different regions, especially California, other places where they have hotbeds of Islamic communities. That's where they will tend to hide, in those communities. So if you live in a state that has a lot of Islamic communities, in other words, they're congregating in areas, be vigilant in your prayer. Obviously pray for your safety, but be vigilant in your prayer that every hidden agenda would be uncovered. State Department has issued a warning for all international travel at this time for Americans all across the world, because we now are targets. And the fact that Qatar is being hit right now is an indication that is true, and that's what's happening. So, Zach, you want to speak to that? I got Zach here with me, and we want to speak to any issue on this before we get into some other topics. So if you got anything, I don't see him in there. Okay, he wants me to keep rolling. So I'll just keep rolling here with that issue. I think the most important part for us is that we're seeing some other things that they're talking about doing, and actually shutting the what they call the Strait of Hormuz. If you know your geography in that region, what happens is that there's a little area there that the boats have to go through. I think 20% of all oil in the world goes through that strait every day. And the Iranians are threatening to close it. President Trump, in response, has released oil reserves, began to flood the market with oil to stop any such action. But I think the fact is that if they do this, there's going to be other voices in this. And I think Senator Rubio made a comment about it, and I want to play his comment that'll help us understand what's going on here as far as that portion of it is.
To move to close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that, because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that. But other countries should be looking at that as well. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours. It would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not just by us, but from others. So, look, they're going to say what they need to say. You know, these are the things that need to happen for their own internal politics and so forth. But in the end, we're going to judge them by the actions that they take moving forward. We had 3 objectives. We struck those 3 objectives with decisive force. And that was the point of this mission. And that's what we achieved. What happens next will depend on what they do. They want to negotiate. We're ready to negotiate. They want to get cute and do things that are dangerous. We have responses available that are devastating.
Well, I just thank God for Secretary of State Rubio. I call him Senator. That's what I remember him as. But he is a godsend for our nation right now, with the incompetency that we watched for the last 4 years prior in that office. And although I think Blinken was a good man, I think he is handcuffed by the Biden administration completely on what he wanted to do. But nonetheless, that's kind of where we are on that. And I think you're right. I think he's right there that China will have a big say in that because 90% of their fuel comes from Iran. So they're not going to want that strait closed. They're going to want it to keep it open. From what I can tell, I'm watching another feed here. It looks like now Iran has shot missiles also at Iraq, at our bases there as well. So as we're live here, there's much going on that we got to cover our troops with. So we pray right now. I'm going to just enter into prayer. Father, I pray for our troops right now all across the region and Qatar as well as Iraq. Lord, even beyond that, I pray that, Lord, in the midst of this, that they would feel the peace of God. Lord, we ask you to protect from any demonic arrow that's come from this Prince of Persia spirit, that, God, you are faithful to cover our soldiers and all the assets around it, even the Iraqis and the Qataris that are around there. Father, I pray protection. Let it be a sign and a wonder that you are the protector of the people who believe in covenant and believe in what you're doing in the earth. I pray that right now in the name of Jesus. We just plead the blood of Jesus over that issue right now. Okay, so it's popping, needless to say. And I think, you're seeing such a split within our own political parties, within the Republican Party, that you got Democrats and Republicans saying this is unconstitutional, which articles of the Constitution do give the president right if he feels our American assets our people are being threatened. It's very clear that he has constitutional rights. AOC calling for his impeachment. They love to throw the impeachment word out all the time. This guy named Massey in Kentucky, I realize he's a voice. He's a libertarian. Zach, why don't you explain about Massey, where he comes from? Because he's one of our biggest battles, what we try to do many times. I have people in Kentucky that have begged me to pray that he be removed from office. But he's a libertarian, and people don't always understand what a libertarian is. But what is his views? Why is he such a thorn in the side of the Republicans?
Yeah, so this is a very heated topic. A lot of the Tea Party, and this is where Thomas Massey got a lot of his authority and power and movement behind him. Rand Paul and even Ron Paul before him were big Tea Party people. And basically what they are fiscal conservatives who are international isolationists, which that has always bode very poorly for America when we've tried to be isolationist and tried to think that we can avoid the world's problems and that the world's problems aren't going to. And in this instance, the Middle East come towards us. I mean, you have the whole Marines, which was set up, and their fight song is "From the Shores of Tripoli." And so this is kind of where there's a disconnect of what's really going on and what's going on in Thomas Massey and Rand Paul's head. Both of them had voted no on pretty much any international. It doesn't matter whether it's with an ally, Israel, or with funding for Russia. Like, they just vote no in general. And the problem with that is you ignore the reality that Iran was and is developing before this weekend. The potential to develop nuclear weapons when they got to 60% enrichment of uranium. And I don't know if we want to go into kind of how we got here, but the reality is that the only thing that he really cares about is himself and his own pocketbook. It's a libertarian mindset. If you've ever heard the name Ayn Rand, she was a big promoted of the libertarian philosophy. Most of them all quote Ayn Rand's books as the gospel, and that's kind of how they view the world. Meanwhile, this was a very troubled human being, Ayn Rand herself. There are some good philosophies, but ultimately how we have the pro-socialist, you have the pro-capitalist who just, you look at yourself. The problem with that is you throw out morals and ethics. Well, when you do that, because you're only promoting yourself above anything else, which is just the same thing of what socialism's doing. It's just doing it through the state, whereas with libertarian ideology, it's doing it through the capitalistic society. And when you read and you understand Ayn Rand's philosophy, their whole thing is just get what you want, and then maybe one day you'll possibly be able to just get out of here and just live a happy-go-lucky life. As long as you let other people do what they want to do, they're not going to come and attack you or take away your freedoms and your rights. Well, the problem with that, as you see through socialism, is that, well, eventually the other person who has a weapon will use that weapon and come and try to get you to bend and bow to their worldview. And so you play this game of chicken with nuclear warheads. That doesn't bode well for anybody. And Marco Rubio said it. He was asked from CNN, why would we do such a thing? This isn't a threat. And this is the big thing that libertarians are saying, is that Iran's not a threat. Why are we doing this? We don't need to do this. They're only responding because the U.S. and Israel are attacking them. Well, the reality is since they're stated, and we can get into this, from the very beginning, their whole goal is to wipe out Israel. And then when they're done with Israel, they're coming for America. That is legitimately what they say every time they go on the news. They have a chant: death to Israel and then death to America. And the issue that I've seen is I've listened to a lot of debates over the weekend from libertarians and those who support Israel, is that Israel's always a problem. The United States is always the aggressor. The problem was the Iraq, Afghanistan war, and they have some legitimacy to that, and they have some legitimacy about not wanting to go into another war. Okay, that's very well heated. That's why you hear Trump talking about this is not about a regime change up until this morning. That's not what they want. They don't want to put boots on the ground. They want to get rid of the regime and let the people come into power. Yeah. That's kind of why he's given that. And a lot of times they're just the loudest and biggest voice in the room. But reality is it's not very played out. Their thought is not very well played out in reality, because they ignore who the players really are. And a lot of guys that I went to college with were big in the Tea Party. And this is just a microcosm of the Tea Party's mindset: is we should not care about the Middle East. Let them, blow themselves up. Well, the problem is they've left the Middle East. They've gone to Europe. They have now come to the continent of North America, and they have made their way into America, as with these sleeper cells that Tom Homan talks about. So it is on our doorstep, and it's no longer something that we can avoid. And the big thing is that when the IAEA came out, the IAEA does not want to put a slap on the wrist on Iran. They're part of the UN. They harm Israel. They challenge them on human rights violations. But when the IAEA came out the couple weeks ago and said, hey, this is problematic. We've been able to verify that they've been able to enrich uranium up to 60%, but it could possibly be more. And so when they came out on that was the kind of the red flag for Trump, Israel, when he was at the G7 meetings. And so that's kind of where we stand when you ignore these realities of what's really going on, and you just point to the bad things that America has done, and in your eyes, the bad thing that Israel's done, you forget who you're up against.
And this is what Zach just said. Rubio addresses this on Face the Nation Sunday.
That the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization.
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is the key point in
U.S.
U.S. intelligence assessments. You know
that.
No,
it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's not.
The political decision had not been made.
I know that better than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons, because they can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No, but that's a question. That's a question of intent, and you know, in the intelligence assessment that it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold state and use this leverage. I'm talking about the public March assessment, and that's why I was asking you if you know something more from March.
But that's also an inaccurate representation of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program. So why would you enrich uranium at 60%?
Right.
if you don't intend to one day use it to take it to 90 and build a weapon?
Right.
Why are you developing ICBMs? Why do you have 8,000 short-range missiles and 2,000 to 3,000 long mid-range missiles that you continue to develop? Why do you do all these things? They
Understood.
have everything they need for a nuclear weapon. They have the
Okay.
delivery mechanisms. They have the enrichment capability. They have the highly enriched uranium that is stored.
Yes.
That's all we need to see.
Right. Well, and that's-
especially in
so
the
it was
hands
the
of a regime that's already involved in terrorism and proxies and all kinds of things around. They are the source of all
Yes, and no one's disputing. No one's disputing that. I'm not doing that here.
Oh yeah, you are. She is disputing it, and I think that's the. I think Rubio put her in her place there, and I think it's exactly what Zach was saying just then of what is going on in the region, and so this goes back to us and who watched the Iraqi War, mass destructions, weapons, and we know they moved them. They moved them out of Iraq when we came in there, and to this day, there are still Democrats and others say that they never had mass destruction weapons, and which is not true, but that's what they say, and they're trying to create the same narrative here at some level. Just because they're doing 60% doesn't mean they're going to produce a nuclear bomb. And he made the great point there that that's the only people that have that much do produce it. And look who's screaming the most right now. The three nations that are screaming the most about this attack is Russia, China, and North Korea. And those are the three ones who are upset the most. North Korea is probably screaming the most because they just watched what happened in Iran and they realized it could have happened to them. Unfortunately, Clinton and others who saw that being built did not take the step that President Trump took this time and stopping that. And so therefore they do have a nuclear weapon and they are a danger to the entire Asia region.
Well, the benefit multiplier of this strategic move by the Trump administration was now it forces China to reconsider its possible actions with Trump in office about going after Taiwan. And then not only that, with Russia, is because Israel and the United States took out a lot of these military sites, is now Russia is having a problem, is going to have a problem with getting weapons and getting drones to attack Ukraine. So Trump is really dealing with multiple wars with these one strategic attacks and possibly preventing future wars as well. And now he's calling for continued peace talks. And we were talking about this earlier. What the Iranian regime who's left is doing is saying, well, the world needs to watch out for the United States because now they're going to go, not only when they've attacked us, they're going to go after an attack in Northern Europe. And so this is just kind of the what you would call cognitive dissonance that's there, the just lack of reality of understanding. And this applies to even, Thomas Massie here is unfortunately on this topic, he is not an expert, and this is not something he's very familiar with because he just wants to avoid the situation. And for Rubio, this is something he has lived for the last 20 years. So in order for somebody to sit there and argue with him is quite hilarious, and pretend that they know how to read intelligence briefings when he's been doing it at the top level with some of the most just highly strategic world, especially in the Middle East. If he wasn't picked for this position, it would have been a mistake by Trump, but this is his bread and butter. This is what he has done for so long. And he understands these regimes. So he understands the players at here. So he can advise President Trump, and President Trump has chosen wisely for him to represent the United States as Secretary of State.
And I just thrown this feed up here from Fox, just to let y'all know the bases that are being attacked. You have 5 bases that are being attacked from Syria to Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, and Iraq. So those are our battlegrounds right now. So we just pray protection over those bases as we're on live here right now. I know y'all probably, some of you would rather be watching that, but hang in there with us. We think we need to cover this and pray over this. I think it's a very important topic for us right now that we stand with them on this. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, and something you're going to see is, I guess I've already seen it, is that, they're going to say, Iran did this because Israel, the United States attacked them. It's a reactionary. And acting like when Israel started bombing Iran last week, that was the first and the start of the war. You have to forget, when you go back to Trump's message on Saturday night, is that Iran has funded and developed these IEDs, roadsides that had blown up many American soldiers' bombs, legs, in arms and decapitated them and killed thousands. And it's like, if that's what they've done just with, regular explosives, what are they going to do with nuclear explosives? Like, you can't ever go back once they get the nuclear weapons in their head. And to Rubio's point is, if they develop these long range missiles, there's even another analysis when Rubio was on with Fox. He talked about, before the clip you played, he talked about how, look, these ballistic missiles can reach not only Israel, but they're going to be able to reach, they're trying to reach Europe. They're trying to, okay, if they can get them, to Europe, then they're going to possibly get them to Venezuela and or Cuba or Nicaragua somewhere, and then possibly get them and hit. I mean, this goes back to the Cold War. Play out same strategies, because this is the same regime that was doing a lot of those same things then. It's just delay of time. I mean, Daniel 7:25, times and seasons to wear down the saints is this is where, if you understand history, and unfortunately this is one of those things where libertarians tend to easily forget. They live in the now and don't look long term and understand past history to understand how we're going to move forward.
Yeah, and I'm watching some feed here. They're intercepting most of the missiles in Qatar, again, however you pronounce it, but as well as the bases in Iraq. So we do have some interception. I know they got the THAAD system and others. Some of them they've moved from Ukraine and brought it to the Middle East. So pray, Lord, we just pray that every missile that's coming from Iran be intercepted, Father. I pray protection, a holy dome over those places, Lord, even for the citizens in those nations, Father. We just lift them up to you right now. So it's really happening. We're real time here. And one other thing I want to speak of, there's a former IDF spokesman who I was able to sit under many briefings. His name is Jonathan Conricus, I think is how you say his name. But he talks about this issue here on Newsmax. Listen to some of the things he has to say. I think it'll be an important for your information of what he's carrying for what's going on in the region.
Right of this, but they have a difficult decision to make, whether or not to continue to escalate, which they can if they want to, or to kind of concede the tactical defeat and the demise of their nuclear weapons program, and perhaps save the rest of the regime and not further exasperate the situation. And the ball is in the Iranian court. They can attack American forces. They can close the Straits of Hormuz. They can unleash the remaining ballistic missiles that they have in their stockpiles towards Israel. And they can try to hit US or Israeli or Jewish targets abroad. All of those tools are at their disposal, and maybe they can do other things. But the main issue here is what would be wise for the Iranians. They've had many off-ramps, but they haven't chosen them so far. For their sake, I hope that they'll be smart and choose to de-escalate now, because their military options are very limited. If they decide to escalate, I think they would be in lots and lots of trouble, and they would really endanger their own existence and regime.
I want you to take a listen to this, Colonel. Defense Secretary.
And that's the point right there. They're in risk of their own regime. And I think that's what's going on. If you watch the reports this weekend, we'll go back to that here in just a second. If you watch reports this weekend, J.D. Vance got on the shows and said that we're not asking for a regime change. Most of the whole cabinet saying that. And then President Trump put on social media, Trump Social, that maybe a regime change would be good. And what this is diplomacy. And for everybody, it sounds like they're contradicting themselves. That is what you want an enemy to think. I've learned this working with Israel through the years. I've lobbied for them. This is I don't want to call it a game. It's more than a game. It's a way to make the enemy not be aware of what your plans are and what you're trying to do. We saw that this weekend when they sent B-2s to Guam, and everybody in the world was following those B-2s in Guam. Meanwhile, they were bombing from the other direction. They flew east. So that's kind of how it works. So it's also as a message to the Iranian government regime that if you do this, then we can talk about regime change. That's really what the message is they're trying to send them. So it's a double message, but it's something that I've had to learn is I don't listen to what's said. I listen to what's not said at times. And what's not being said on this situation is that that this could be the next step. Now, as we're live here today, as we're talking to you, these bases are being hit. There's over 40,000 troops that we have in the region. So this is very serious, what's happening here. And as he was just saying, the former IDF spokesman was saying that they could do this. They could do, well, they are doing that. And they're releasing that right now. So they're playing their cards. And let me tell you what, they don't have many cards in their hand right now. Unless somebody else intervenes, they're pretty much alone.
Well, it's biblically, it's wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove.
Yes.
And then naturally, this is the playbook of the art of the deal. And what I mean by that is you don't basically hold your cards back, play them. And in this is in you know, to a proverbial sense, Trump's kind of playing poker here, and he knows what he's up against. He's saying, look, and JD Vance and Trump is even saying it before. Look, we don't want to put boots on the ground and force a regime change. Obviously, they do. They want, and if you look at his statements, he said he wants to give this regime the chance to make Iran great again. You know, you talk about MAGA for America. He said MIGA for Iran, which is just hilarious. And somebody tweeted out a hat about that. But if they're not going to do it, and goes back to your point when you talked about how when you go to your enemy, you offer them peace, and if they don't want it, okay, now you have biblically, spiritually, kind of the open door to now defend yourself and go and attack them, and the Lord can be behind you in that. And even after the bombing, he's given them a chance, and this is their response.
Yes.
This is the response of the Iranian regime, the IRGC, to go after the people who are offering them something to keep them in power. And they're saying, no, now's the time to go all out and defend themselves, because they realize the significance of these attacks. And so I think we have to realize, okay, Trump's this is who he is. This is what he's playing. Ben Shapiro came out. I mean, he's attacked Trump for all get out, but he's praising Trump and a lot of people are saying that I don't think any other president would have done this. I mean, you have Obama, who gave them $150 billion. And we were talking about this before, that before Obama went into the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, there was a political organization within Iran called the Green Party. And it was basically a rise up of the people, the dissidents, to try to fight back and get a regime change themselves. Well, when Obama entered into that deal, it was of appeasement. He gave the regime $150 billion, and that squashed that movement and ended it all throughout. So this is kind of the fallout from that. And obviously you have Trump doing the sanctions, and then Biden giving more money, and now sanctions again. And unfortunately that hurts the people, but also at the same time and this is the thought process that's out there, is that, well, if you're harming the regime, yes, you'll somewhat harm the people. And this is why Trump did the sanctions in the first place, is because you need to motivate the people again to say, hey, look, you have to deal with this. The people themselves, and this is what Trump's saying by not saying he wants a regime changes, they need to take their country back. How that's done, that's kind of still what's up to be debated. And that's kind of to a degree, that's the libertarians' point, and they have a point on that. They don't want to see boots on the ground, but the question is how could you possibly remove this regime? And for us as intercessors, the question is, all right, Lord, what is the move that you're having us make? And how can we pray and pray for the leaders who are in our nation and in our states, and even Israel itself? What move should they make next?
We'll continue a little bit on this interview.
Pete Hegseth emphasizing where the United States stands. Take a listen to this, sir.
The United States does not seek war, but let me be clear. We will act swiftly and decisively when our people, our partners, or our interests are threatened.
The United States also saying that it does not want regime change. So your thoughts, Colonel?
Yeah, I think that was a very good and solid statement by the secretary. I think it's his first, and that's a very good, strong start. And I think the messages are clear, and it's very coherent. The U.S. doesn't want war. The U.S. doesn't seek escalation. It seeks to de-escalate. And the main message to the Iranians is, again, the U.S. extends the hand of non-violence and basically tells the Iranians, if you're smart and willing to, you can get out of this with an agreement. It's up to the Iranians to understand and interpret it correctly and to choose wisely.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay, so there we go. And that just really just reiterate what Zach just said. So I think we're tracking very well today, what the Lord's saying through all this. I think we want to make sure that we are just agreeing what the word says. And like Zach said, and he said as well, they've offered peace here. They're rejecting peace. And then as we watch in the live feed, as I glance back and forth here, they're still shooting rockets. We're intercepting. It sounds like so far everything that's been shot has been intercepted. So praise God for that. Our prayer shield is working. We don't want to quit that. And again, it's got to be frightening also for the citizens of those communities because they got to live there with, I don't know how to explain how close it is. It's literally just across a river almost, or a little ocean strait there, Iran and the UAE, Qatar, Iraq. You have a border there. Syria has a border with them. And we have bases all in those areas. We got, like I said, we have 40,000 soldiers or assets in that region that we've got to pray protection over. And that's what we are believing for. And look, a regime change creates a lot of issues. I read one report today where the military is considering taking Khomeini out, not killing him, just taking his power away from him, and then them taking control of the government. I think that would be a better solution, if you ask me. Then you don't have a religious solution that Zach was talking about earlier as well, because when you have religious issues there, which are driving the regime and their actions, they feel, according to the Quran and all that they believe faith-wise, I hate to call it faith, religious-wise, that what they're doing is something good. And taking out Israel, they call us the great Satan, right? And they feel like they're doing a good thing. And when you have that radicalization, as I was praying yesterday with our intercessors and we were in a meeting, one thing I remembered in the Revolutionary War, the British, they felt more threatened by the pastors than anybody, because they knew pastors could motivate the people. And then the people would rise up and be a part of the revolution. They called the Black Robe Brigade. These pastors that would preach a sermon and pull the curtain back and get their rifles and say, let's go to war. And the people would fight with them. And so they were a threat. And so many times the British targeted pastors because if they could shut their mouths, then the people wouldn't be motivated. Well, the same thing in the mullahs and the imams who motivate these people. I think as a whole, the Iranian people wouldn't probably be doing this. But when you get radicalized by religion, when you add that, and now you got a religious political spirit partnering together is what you have. And that's one of the most dangerous things. That's what killed Jesus. You had the political and the religious. Now, he needed to die for our salvation. I get that. But that's how far it can go. It begins to partner together because they both have goals that coincide with each other. So they'll work together to achieve their own personal goals. And that's what we're seeing. So this is a danger of what we're looking at right now.
Let me play this clip that explains this in the actual terminology that the Iranian regime believes, because if we understand what religiously the regime itself believes, that we can understand Trump's understanding of this and Rubio's understanding of this, and this is from a pretty popular podcast called Trigonometry, where they ask a former she's a descendant of Iranians, and she gives this answer to this question. Let me get this set up here, and then we'll play it.
Iran is very far away from Israel.
Let me take that off double speed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So their objective and their desire to wipe Israel off the map, which is one of the objectives, seems to a lot of people kind of difficult to understand. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So basically, Iran, there's two types of Islam. There's Shia Islam and Sunni Islam. The regime in Iran subscribes to 12 Shia Islam. So the reason it's called 12 Shia Islam is because they believe that the descendants of the original prophet Muhammad is not the correct lineage of the prophets. It's of his son-in-law and cousin. So the 12th Imam, which was Prophet Mahdi. So there's this theory called Mahdiism. This Prophet Mahdi was said to have gone into occultation. So he went into hiding around 937 CE. So he's gone into hiding, he's gone into oculation, and the theory is that the final prophet emerges once there is once justice and equality has been achieved in the world. And the thing that achieves this justice is that the last drop of blood of Israel falls. So the end of Israel brings back the final prophet.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've never heard this. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's a religious thing. It's a prophecy
It is.
thing.
Yeah.
So they need to destroy Israel.
They need to destroy Israel, correct. So that's
for
why
the prophecy to be fulfilled.
Exactly. So that's why that's now how you get into the proxies of the regime, right? So you have the regime
This point here is
almost
huge.
immediately after the regime comes into power within the next, so it comes into power in 1979. Within the next 2 years between that 1981, they create Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is essentially a second IRGC, which was created for the purpose of destroying Israel from the closest possible border. Because as you said, Iran's not close enough to Israel to be able to accomplish that. So they were like, okay, let's take Lebanon. Let's put an army of the IRGC in Lebanon, which is
What
the
is the
border of Israel.
IRGC?
So that kind of explains the political motive, or more so the religious motivation for the politics in this. And this is why Trump had to do what he needed to do, is because they're after blood, and they need the blood in order for them to fulfill the prophecy that's within the Quran and the sect of Islam that they believe. And so with that in mind, if you understand that, and unfortunately, this is what the libertarians and those like Thomas Massey and others out there tend to ignore, whether intentionally or just out of ignorance. And this is where this is a huge piece of who these people are and their identity. And that's what Rubio understands. That's what Trump understands, because he's dealt with these people for quite a long time. And now you're going to start seeing a move for all these countries that now Iran is attacking, and even Saudi Arabia, to get them involved in the Abraham Accords. Whether long-term that's the right thing or not, I think in the short term it could be. But we're seeing that play out. And that's kind of the thing that we need to pray about of, okay, Lord, what are the future next steps? And I think the big thing, one that we've been praying for, I think we can continue to pray for, is even like, say, like someone like this, who is an Iranian descendant, is pray for her to get saved. I think she's still a Muslim, and go back to her country and bring the gospel. And that's the wave that's happening. I mean, Sean Foyt is big into that. We have some ministries that we support as well, but it's one of those things where if we can understand, okay, the destiny of not only the people, but the nation itself, that's kind of what we want to pray for there. And the attack, remember, we have to remember this. The attacks are not on the Iranian people.
Right.
Now, will they get affected? Yes, but it's more so on the regime, so that the regime can be forced to allow freedoms to come from. And in reality, that's the very thing they don't want, the freedoms. They don't want the progression of freedoms for the people. They want to restrict that in order for their sect of Islam to come forward.
And, Christians, we got to be careful too, because, we listen to that theology that the Iranians have, Islamic theology, and you think that's crazy. Well, when they listen to our theology, they think the same thing, because there are Christians that say that the Jews need to die for Jesus to come back. I'm not making that up. They interpret the book of Revelation that way. I've had Jewish people come to me and have been talked to by ministers and Christians who tell them that they have to die in order for the Messiah to come back. So it's almost, it's a deception, obviously, on the Islamic side, but it's even in the church, the Christian church. And they quote, Zechariah 12 and all this stuff. I understand where they get some of what they're talking about, but the fact is that's not our goal, is to have theology to kill anybody in order to have Jesus come back. That should never be part of our narrative and our talk. Our talk is for peace. Our talk is for God's will to be done, for an awakening, a revival. That's what I did my podcast on today. I wanted to make sure that we believed for a breakthrough in the midst of all that's going on. These bases there in Qatar, we have 10,000 soldiers there right now in that place. And as far as we see, the Pentagon's announcing there's no casualties at all so far. I know the Situation Room, which Hegseth and Raising Cane, they call General the Joint commissioner, I don't care what they call him, Joint Council, is there, and they're talking about the situation. So they've intercepted almost all those missiles that have come in, the Qatari air defenses had. So thank God for that. Everything's going well so far. So here's the thing, Iran is dumping all their weapons. They're not limitless. Sometimes we watch movies and we think, when they start shooting that gun, they never run out of bullets. Well, that's not how it is in real life. And they've already shot a ton of them at Israel. Israel's taken out, sometimes they said up to 2/3 of their weaponry anyway. So their weapons are limited at this time, and they're going all out. And this may be the end of the regime. It may be the very thing that President Trump was mentioning when he said that on Truth Social, is that they're gonna cause their own regime to fall. Because I know the Israelis hit the targets of the prison where they keep their dissidents, those people who stand against the government. They hit the prison this morning. I don't know if it caused the release of those prisoners, but they did hit it. They're hitting other sites. They hit, I know one place where the top regime, as far as the army was, they hit their building. I know they killed over 100 plus of their top soldiers. So they're losing their continuity. And when you fight a war, the continuity of leadership is credible. In most wars, in the old wars, in the 1700s, 1800s, whatever, it was gentlemen's honor to not shoot the officers, because when the officers go down, chaos is created. Well, that still works today. You take out the head and chaos creates, because who's in charge? Who's going to give direction? What's going to happen? And that's what Israel is doing right now to the leadership.
Yeah, kind of looking forward is if they run out of these weapons, the negotiations with Iranians' allies, the Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, our intelligence and reports are coming out that they're considering funding them or giving them some weapons so they can defend themselves, which could possibly prolong the war. Whether that really happens or not, I think is still kind of up in the air. The comments from Russia and China towards Iran, or more so against the United States about the attack on Iran, is just kind of like, hey, don't do that. Just kind of, show international support for Iran in these instances because they've become allies. But like Rubio said, is if Iran makes some of these economic moves to try to, shut off the Strait of Hormuz and things like that, that ultimately hurts China. That's going to hurt Russia.
Yep.
And they really need their support right now. We saw during COVID and with Obama and even after Trump in his first term is, they're becoming strong allies. Well, right now that's a deficiency. Because small little Ukraine is holding up against, big mighty Russia. China's, proven to be a big paper tiger. And then now Iran's, is kind of Trump is calling their bluff right now. So the whole world is kind of being reshapen right now. And then for us, I think looking even further is, okay, after Trump, what's next? Who's next? How do we get out of that? Because that's what even 2026, the midterms, that's what Democrats are looking at. They're going to use this as, how dare you have done this? We shouldn't have done this. And if it goes any disadvantage towards Trump, they're going to use that in the midterms. But I think the reality is, okay, let's get our bases together. This is why it's important right now to pray for them, because we have to look long term about what this could possibly mean as we continue to, or as we start to make this push towards taking back the country and establishing and holding the freedoms that we've established.
And when we look at these riots in America and all the stuff's going on, it's all tied together. You got to understand this. The pro-Palestinian, the pro-Hamas movement, the Free Palestine from the river to the sea, riots, ICE, immigration, it's all connected. And it all, of course, came out of the Biden administration, and Trump is being used by the Lord, I think, to clean up a lot of this mess. Look at this. This is a ex-post from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department that came out yesterday. They since deleted it and apologized, but this was their statement. I want to read this here. It's crazy. It says, our hearts go, this is from the Sheriff's Department of Los Angeles County. It says, our hearts go out to the victims and families impacted by the recent bombings in Iran. While tragic events occurs overseas, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is closely monitoring the situation alongside our local, state, and federal partners. At this moment, there are no known threats in Los Angeles County. However, out of abundance of caution, we are increasing patrol checks and places of worship and other sensitive locations throughout the country. The safety and security of our communities remain our top priority. We will continue to assess and respond to the developments of this. Now, I want you to say that again. Our hearts go out to the victims and family impacted by the recent bombings in Iran. I don't think that's a mistake. I think they said that on purpose, just to stick it to the Trump administration and say, we don't even agree with what you're doing there. And that's just kind of scary when a local municipality group starts doing things like that. We see it in local city councils now, having decrees. I know up in Seattle and Portland are doing, making statements against Israel, against America from public platforms. It's just wrong. It's not what America's about, and we've got to pray that that stops as well. Anything else, Zach, before we close out? Okay, well, thank you for being with us. You can, after we finish here, y'all can go slide over to Fox. It sounds like it's really quieted down anyway by the time we finished here. Thank goodness. It may rise up again, but it looks like it's quieted down for no casualties on our bases throughout the region. Thank God for that. I believe this prayer works. We believe that with all our heart. And I believe what we're praying right now and what we're standing for is critical in this hour. And you're a big part of that. Thank you for being a part of the Pipeline Report. If this broadcast today helped you and you think it helps somebody else, please share it with them. Again, we're on multiple platforms now. If you'd like to invite your friends to join the Pipeline page on Facebook, do that. If you're already a member, go in there. If you're not, just go to type in Pipeline Report on Facebook and it'll find our page. You have to fill out a little thing and answer a few questions. We don't want just anybody jumping in there. We want to know that you're a believer. You're going to pray with us and fight with us. And then they can watch it on Facebook as well. So we're on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube, all under Pipeline Report. That's why we do this every Monday at 12 noon. We pray that our nation be protected, and we release these reports that we think are important for you and send it down the pipeline. That's why we called it that. So we love you. We appreciate you. We bless you and what you're doing. Thank you for praying with us and standing with us. God bless. We'll see you next week.